to the Talent Optimization Podcast, the go-to podcast for CEOs and HR professionals wanting to bridge the gap between the strategy and tactical implementation of talent optimization within their organizations. Through interviews, predictive index, and personal experience, your host, Tracy Shirk, helps you discover the facets of talent optimization from both a CEO and HR perspective to truly create the dream team for your organization. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Talent Optimization, Creating Your Dream Teams. And we have an amazing special guest with us today. We have Candy Underwood, and Candy is with us from QPS. But what I'm so excited about our conversation with Candy is the fact that she really sees herself as a business professional with HR acumen, and so in that HR expertise. And so, as we've talked about on our show so many times, is that connection between the executive C-suite and human resources and how we really bring those two things together. In addition, Candy will share with us more specifically about what she has done in her experience in broad industry, from manufacturing to financial services and all the way through. So, Candy, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I'm very happy to be here.
So I'm so curious. You lead with being a business professional with HR expertise. Do you want to share a little bit more with us about why that mindset is so important to what you do every day?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's something that I think we hear as HR professionals on a regular basis, but it really does. It takes quite a bit of experience to understand what it really means. And by that, I mean, we can all learn how to read a P&L statement. We can learn how to read a balance sheet. We can understand how our companies make money. But it's that experience that you build over time to understand business cycles, the challenges that a business will go through, not just with individual clients, individual employees, but through a recession, through economic prosperity. And that takes time. And as you grow in your experience in your HR career, when you experience those things, it starts to come together and you understand the connection between what you do in HR and how that can positively impact business results.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that background. So I'm curious, when you talk about business results, what impact does the way you hire have on the business results?
Oh gosh, how does it not, right?
That's a loaded question, right?
Right, but thanks for teeing that up for me. It's an awesome question. It obviously is so important. It can be different across different industries, right? So in manufacturing, of course, talent is very important, but there are things that you can do around your talent, such as automation and other things that can take that place at times. In professional services, like there's not a lot of other alternatives you have than having really exceptional talent. In working in the insurance industry, we needed really good talent. But what I came to actually find out is it was the talent that had the investment background to get the returns, and your actuaries, that were even more highly important. And other talent was important, but there was a prioritization there. Things like staffing. I mean, in the staffing industry where I now am, it's all about the talent, and it's really nothing else. Of course, when you're looking for really good talent, it does depend on the job. You're always looking for table stakes qualities, right? You're always looking for honest employees. You're looking for integrity. You're looking for conscientiousness, right? That's all really important, and that's the foundation. But then I would say what's the most important after that, after those table stakes in hiring new employees, is to know what you need. Mm-hmm. And it's taken me years really to figure out that that's a lot harder than it seems in actuality. We've been in tight labor markets, right, for a really long time. So it has been a little more difficult. But the longer the list of qualifications we have, the harder it's going to be to find that right candidate. And you're going to end up gathering more resumes than you know what to do with if you really don't know what you need. And then in the process of, searching for that perfect candidate, you're not going to be building the employer brand that you really want to build. So what I think is the most important, to go back to your question and actually answer it, is that you need to know what is the most important thing you have to have out of your candidate. Don't search for the perfect candidate, search for the optimal candidate. What are those top 3 things you have to have? Where are you willing to have trade-offs with those candidates? Mm-hmm. It's really about your strategy. And it's so hard, right? Because you'll meet a candidate and they're awesome. You click with them on a personal level. They have a ton of energy and they're enthusiastic and they're really fun. And you start thinking, oh, I would love to work with this person. And maybe they're even like a little bit cheaper than you thought you would have to bring somebody in. So they become really, really attractive. But you know what? They're not who I really need, because I need someone really experienced in XYZ, and they don't have that expertise, and it's really critical to the business. So, again, you can kind of be sucked in by these really awesome candidates, but you have to go back to, what do I need? What are the top 3? I had this with a recent team member of mine. I had an opening on my HR team, and I met so many people that were just phenomenal. And I was truly blessed to have this awesome slate of candidates. But it was a really hard decision because I had so many really strong candidates. But what I was really glad I did from the beginning was I said, Candy, what are your top 3 absolutely must have? And that was so much easier to rule out some of those others that were big, bright, shiny objects.
Yeah, absolutely. So that must have, like to have, dream to have framework is, hey, we know that this is the minimum that we must have for this to be successful. One of the things that you mentioned, and I'm curious to dig into this a little bit further, is you mentioned, okay, there's key skill sets that they have to have, but then we're also looking at what are those other attributes? Like we click really well, we get along great, right? And we tend to, I've defined these, and we've defined these as head, heart, briefcase, meaning, hey, what are those behavioral traits that the individual really has to have to be successful in the role? What are those? So that's your head. Your heart is, hey, what is that cultural fit, right? What specifically are the cultural values of the organization? And what is an individual's cultural values? Do those things overlap or don't they? Because if they don't, it's probably not going to work. And then, the briefcase piece is education, experience, skill set. You mentioned this in the financial industry, right? That, hey, that's incredibly important. And, we're hiring that whole person. And I don't know if you've ever had the experience of interviewing someone and you're like, this is the best person ever. Like 30, 60, 90 days later, you're like, who the heck is that? And where's the person I interviewed? Can I have them back, please?
No, Tracy, that's never happened to me. What are you talking about?
If any HR person or manager for that matter tells me that's never happened, I'm going to be like, okay, really? I think you're either lying to yourself or to us. I don't know.
Yes, their nose is growing.
Yes, we've got Pinocchio on board and we don't like that. And that's a cultural thing too, right? To say, hey, we're going to own our mistakes and we're going to be transparent with them and we're all going to learn them. Like that's a cultural trait, because I get the questions a lot saying, what do you mean by cultural traits, Tracy? I don't understand. So that's a great example. So going back to knowing exactly what you want, when you're looking at that, especially if it's someone not on your team and you're the HR person involved in that hiring practice or in that hiring for them, how do you bring all the key leaders together to ensure that we actually know what it is and we're all on the same page so that the individual doesn't walk into the role and feel like an octopus being pulled in 8 different directions, getting 8 different, ways to do something.
Right. Yes, that can be such a challenge. And I have had those experiences as a recruiter or someone who's otherwise involved in trying to get especially higher level candidates into a role. And you can feel like a cowboy trying to wrangle all the different leaders, because the higher level the leader, the higher stakes you have. And then you also have so many others that are working with this person in the organization. They all have, slightly different and sometimes competing ideas of what they need out of that role. So my preference, although it's not always doable, is to get them all in a room so that you can, frankly, kind of duke out some of those things that are most important and really try to get to those top 3 things that everybody agrees are the most important for that key hire, and having some really good debate over, what is the higher prioritization. So it's not a list of 10 things, it's the top 3. And then there's these other nice to haves, but we've all agreed that if we can't find these nice to haves, candidates really strong in those 3, we're going to be happy with that candidate. The fact of the matter is, you don't always have time to get everybody together. I'm sure others listening to this have experienced times where it's like, okay, well, somebody gave notice, and so we need 1 week of overlap training. So really, we need to place this position within 1 week. Right? So, because the person who's leaving gave 2 weeks, we don't always have that time, and sometimes you just can't feasibly corral everyone in the same room to get agreement. So what I will do in that case is to really fall back on your cultural beliefs. Those we know are the table stakes, and talking to each of the leaders or people who will be working with this role, understanding which of the beliefs the values, company values, are really most key out of the perspective of that person who'll be working with them is really important. And then sometimes you can't even get that. Like, you literally get a 5-minute hallway conversation with someone. Not that that's ever happened, right? But yes, it has.
Sometimes it's a 3-word email, right?
Right. And I'll say on occasion, you don't get agreement. So, you need to make the best of it. And as the recruiter or the person who's helping weed out candidates and do some screening, you need to do the best with what you have. Mm-hmm. And so where I will usually fall back, depending on the role, but in general, and I would say especially for leadership positions, I look for learning agility out of key hires. If I can get some stories out of a candidate that demonstrates that they can pick up things pretty fast, I will look for that, because that learning agility, that if they can learn the job, as long as we can give them the right resources, right, to learn it, I will fall back. That's one of my fallback things that I will see if a candidate has. And the other, I would say, is a growth mindset, especially in leaders who can find other people's strengths and then find ways to structure work around those strengths that really, as long as they align to business goals, right? That to me is a really key leadership trait that I want out of all my leaders. And I'm kind of talking more about hiring leaders than, the non-people leaders, but those are some of the things that I'll look for. With very high level leaders, the absolute most important thing I look for is humility. To me, humility is one of those key characteristics. I've seen it in throughout my career. I've seen it be an issue too many times, where ego gets in the way. And that ego drives competition throughout a culture in the wrong ways.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
those are sort of my fallbacks. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it really does, because where that individual sits on a team will play a huge impact. And hey, what is the strategy that this team needs to execute on? And based on where someone sits from a behavioral standpoint on that team, we can tell, hey, is this individual balancing the team? If we have individuals that are very results and discipline driven, guess what? Are they all competing with each other versus competing with this outside force, and how we bring that in? And I'm really curious. So you talked about humility and you talked about some of those key drives within that. But do you have a story of, or someone maybe inside your organization or previously, that really exemplifies that, just to give our listeners that into, okay, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, I have a great story with keeping the innocent and the others,
I hear you.
the others anonymous. Prior life before QPS, like I said, I've worked for a number of different companies and in different industries. I spent a lot of time in the insurance world. So I worked for a health insurer based out of Milwaukee that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. Spent 8 years there. And then I also worked for life insurance for Northwestern Mutual as a business partner as well. So I had a great opportunity to work with those, not only the different areas within those industries, but also with a lot of different personalities. And I had a lot of different leaders that I reported to as well. Mm-hmm. So one story, there was a leader that I reported to, and this is a very personal story, a leader that I reported to, where when I was coming into the company and into the role, it was a company that was very steeped in tradition. They had been around over 100 years, which I'll tell you, both of those insurance employers that I worked for were both around over 100 years. So protecting the innocent again. So it was very difficult to break into that new role, because people that I was working with had been there for decades, and they had built that area and what they did over years and years of success. And so having an outsider come in and trying to build relationships, I had outside expertise, didn't know any of these people, very, very difficult. And I had a leader who had been there a very, very long time, but knew that was going to be a pretty big hurdle for me. And she did everything in her power to make sure that I felt welcomed and that I was building the right relationships. She coached me on how to build those relationships with individual leaders, but she always asked my opinion. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the best ways a leader can be humble. Right. Because it's not saying, Candy, here's how you need to do things. It's, Candy, let me hear, what are you seeing and how are you interpreting that? And now apply your expertise and your experience and tell me what it looks like to you. So it was such a great partnership. It wasn't telling me what I had to do. It was really helping me find my way on my own. And that to me is one way that a leader can show humility. On the flip side, there was a leader that came into that same organization that had the opposite. And I could tell you that area, you could literally see the competitiveness rise within 1 year's time frame. Mm-hmm. And the culture that was there was just no longer there. Right, so I had the benefit of seeing both sides and in rather close proximity to each other too. And I have to say that I'm not sure I saw that humility as so important until I saw the dark side, right? Right. So you kind of don't know what you have until it's gone, right? As they say. I feel very blessed that I actually did get to see both sides of that, because I wouldn't have recognized how important humility was if I didn't experience the opposite.
Absolutely. And that's such a great example, because one of the key things that we look at, for our listeners on our podcast is, hey, what's one key takeaway for executives and what's one key takeaway for HR? And kind of what I'm hearing you say is for executives is be really, really cognizant of how you're leading. Are you leading through humility? Are you leading through the ego? Because that will have a significant impact on how your team's going to follow you and how successful your team will be as well.
Absolutely. It is such a major driver of culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just answered kind of what's one key takeaway for executives, and that's, look at the humility and how you're leading that inside your organization. And what's one key takeaway you have for our HR business partner listeners today?
Oh, goodness. Just one, huh?
We want these actionable, right? Because we know if we give them 10, they're not going to do it.
Right. Oh, it's so hard to pin it to one. I would definitely say, based on what we were just talking about, for HR professionals, I've actually given this advice to those who are a little younger in their HR career to look for those leaders. And that's not easy, right? When you're looking at your career and the next steps that you want to take, and you want to learn more and you want to broaden your experience, and you want to work in different industries, all of that is really, really important. But if you can find that leader and it doesn't have to be your reporting relationship per se, that definitely helps. But if you're working alongside another leader where that leader is truly humble and has that growth mindset in you, you can go so many different places and in so many great directions. So that would be just kind of based off of what we were talking about. But I'd say if we're looking more around your HR skills or abilities, it's learning that business that you're in real time. I'll kind of go back to what I said before. It's not only learning how to read a financial statement or a balance sheet or anything like that, but working through business challenges in real time, not only the challenges, but learning the rhythm of the business is going to make you that much better of an HR professional. If you really think of yourself as the business person who just has that HR expertise, you'll understand more cause and effect of how what you do in HR really drives those business results. So the more opportunity you can get to involve yourself in non-HR things from the business. At QPS, I've started to attend more of our business reviews where we're going over individual branches and individual regions and understanding what are the various challenges. I'm able to see, now that I've been here a little over a year, I'm starting to see those fluctuations. Now in 2020, I would argue it was a crazy fluctuation I hope we never have again, but I was able to see in very real time, when business started to downturn last spring, I was able to live through how did we respond? What was most important? What did we take very, very quick action on? And then how did we start rebounding as well as our businesses rebounded? That is just golden experience, but you got to stop and reflect and take time to learn through that so that you can be a better business partner.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those tips. And where can our listeners find you, Candy?
Oh, I'm all over the place. Email, of course. So Candy, CANDY .underwood@QPSemployment.com. I'm on LinkedIn. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn, I never say no. So I will always do that. And my information is also on the QPS employment site. So I'm happy to get in touch in any other way convenient.
Awesome. Candy, thank you so much for the nuggets of wisdom today. And we have way more than 3, but that's all right. So many good golden nuggets here today. And thank you so much for sharing with our listeners those key things, not only as you grow in your HR career, but how do you transition into really being that business partner versus being that HR professional? Because it's an and both for sure.
It's tricky. So, it's taken me decades to figure it out. So learn from my experience. Others won't take that long.
Absolutely. Great. Well, join us in our next episode as we talk with another QPSer. We will be talking with Becca Peterson as Becca shares with us very specifically what to look for in an employee value proposition. So what are those key things to look for as you're looking to create? Hey, these are those top 3 things we need as an organization to attract this person, and to do that in a way so that when you only have 1 week to source and hire an individual, you have a pool of candidates. So join us next time. And thanks so much, Candy, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Talent Optimization Podcast. You'll find more tools and resources for CEOs and HR professionals looking to bridge the strategies versus implementation gap of talent optimization at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. We've also created a free, valuable resource for you to begin bridging the gap called the Talent Optimization Foundation Membership Program. You can access it for free at elevatedtalentconsulting.com/foundation. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode to learn more about talent optimization and creating a dream team for your organization.